Now, the favorite place to go was the Seaside. And this is because London had a really bad air pollution problem. Everybody was burning coal, the skies were black, and so were their lungs. And they figured that if you breathe fresh air once in a while, this would help you out. So the doctors highly recommended you go to the Seaside to do this. Now, as I said, I would walk and breathe the fresh sea air, but the one thing I would not do is I would not get anywhere near the water, because when I'm fully dressed, this costume weighs 200 pounds. And this is why there were never any women survivors when the ship went down. You couldn't get out of your clothing fast enough, and a Victorian woman would much rather be found dead than with her limbs showing. And even if you did go overboard and they threw you a rope, unless they were a cargo ship and had a cargo crane, there was no way they could lift you out of the water. So those of you who like to read romances of this time period and the woman faints and the hulking man picks her up and carries her to the couch, no bloody way. He catches her to keep her from cracking her head on the ground, and he rings for the servants, and about 6 of them pick her up and put her on the couch. That's how it really worked. The doctors recommended that I had to get into the water, so the next day I would grab my maid, she would grab my case, and we would go down to the beach, and I would step into a bathing cart. This is a 4-sided roofed cart with very, very large wheels. No windows, of course, a little ventilation if you're lucky. And she would get me out of my clothing and dress me into my swimsuit, which would consist of a pair of wool bloomers that went all the way down to my ankle, a knee-length wool tunic with 3/4 sleeves and wool-covered buttons and wool trim, and a wool belt. I put on a pair of wool stockings and a pair of shoes that laced like ballet slippers. I put my hair up into a cap, and some women even wore gloves when they went into the water. And we put the flag up. The man would come with his horse, hook his horse up, drag the cart out into the water. I'd open the door and step out and be immediately up to my neck in water. But this was too scandalous. So they created an awning type of structure so I could slowly get into the water, and they didn't have to drag the carts out so far. Until mid-century, men and women bathed on separate beaches because men didn't wear swimsuits at all. Very scandalous. Now, I might paddle around a little bit. I wouldn't swim. Swimming builds muscles, and muscles are very unladylike. But the doctors recommended that I had to be dunked. So a very large, very drunken woman would come up and say, "All right, dearie, how many dunks did the doctor tell you?" And I'd look at her and I'd go, 3. And she'd grab me by the sailor collar on my swimsuit, which were very popular, and plunge me under the water and haul me back up again, and plunge me under the water and haul me back up. And while she's doing this, I'm sure my maid's sitting there going, "Better her than me." And once I was sputtering like a drowned rat, I'd crawl back into the bathing cart. My maid would get me out of my wet things, dress me back up, we'd put the flag up, the man would come with his horse, drag the cart back onto the beach, and I'd open the door and step out as if nothing at all had happened. And this is supposed to be good for my health.